The Crystal Lake gift shop is now open. Greetings and salutations, friends. This is Minister Venom welcoming you back to the reopening of the shop. Before we start talking about all things Friday the 13th, the series, let me go ahead and introduce my clerks for the episode. Of course, our store manager, as always, is Mr. Mike Maryman. Mike, how the hell you doing?
I'm doing well. We were closed a long time for renovations, so hopefully everything's up, running, and customers will be making their way in to browse and pick up some cursed items.
Yeah, man, those new spicy enchiladas I talked about on the last episode were a little bit too spicy because they started a damn fire in the store. So after taking care of all the fire damage, we are back. And also joining us is our favorite guest clerk coming to hang out with us one more time. It is Miss Lacy Lou. How the hell you doing, Lacy?
I'm good, Mr. Venom and Mr. Maryho. I feel like I'm like a part-time employee at this point in time.
Yeah. At this point, you're practically not a guest. I might have to actually get you to sign on as an employee. Go figure.
Right?
Yeah, I think you're officially on the payroll, and we'll discuss new hours and schedule.
Whoa, pay? Let's not get crazy now.
You can pay me in laughs. I'm going to be like the Don and Ellie of Fresh Cuts. I just show up one episode and then I just never left.
Not bad. I like it. All right, friends, as you know, the Crystal Lake gift shop here. We talk about all things Friday the 13th, the series. And on our latest episode, it is now Helloween at Curious Goods. Yes, this episode is Season 1, Episode 5, known as Hellowe'en. I don't know why the hell it's spelled that way, but there you go. Maybe a smarter man could explain that one to you, but I will go on from there. This episode originally aired on October 26th, 1987. It is exactly 45 minutes long. Oh, look at that. It aired right before Halloween. Go figure. And our synopsis is as follows. On Halloween night, Mickey and Ryan are visited by the ghost of their late uncle who has returned from the underworld. Yes, my friends, Uncle Lewis is back after, a 3-episode hiatus after making a quick appearance in the series premiere. He is back for his Halloween night plot, which we'll get into here in a little bit. So let's just go ahead and get into the festivities. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest clerk, Miss Lacy Lou. And Lacy, why don't you talk to us a little bit on your general thoughts on Helloween?
So I wasn't there for the first episode, so I didn't know that he was there. So to see the uncle anyways, right? So it was cool. When I was watching it, I totally thought, I was like, well, this should be like a finale episode, because for a minute it was almost like he has like a redemption arc, and then I'm like, oh, very fast, no, that's not what this is. So I thought I loved the Halloween party. I thought they had some really fun costumes. It felt very, very, very 80s. It starts off strong, and then about the third act, it kind of loses you a bit with how everything ends up playing out. But I thought it started out really strong, and it had really good Halloween atmosphere. We're at a party. I don't know why they would have a party at this place with all these antiques around, but I mean, they even kind of make a joke about that. But I thought it was fun. There's a midget in there somewhere.
Which apparently is the politically correct term in 1987, so...
Is it not politically correct now, or is it just little person?
There's a point of contention there, because I've actually been corrected multiple times on that word, that they don't really like that word, and that little person is the proper politically correct term now. I don't know any personally, so it's not like I would ever really get tested on it, but yeah, that's just what I've heard. And when you think about it, when was the last time you heard someone use that word in like a new piece of content, a new movie or TV show? It's almost always little person now.
Like
even that TV show that they had was, what's that?
What about like midget wrestling?
It's not called midget wrestling anymore.
What?
No, to my knowledge, not at all. I'm not even sure if there's any actual promotion. Dwarf tossing would be a little bit more correct, since there's actually like a verifiable critique for being a dwarf as opposed to a little person. Don't ask me what it is. I don't know. But to my knowledge, there's an actual dwarf is an actual allowable term, if you will. So sorry, Lacy, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead with your general thoughts.
Oh, no, I apologize for anybody that I offended with using the word midget. So, like, the world is so ridiculous these days. Like, I can't keep up. Anyways, but yeah, so there is a little person in this, and I was not expecting that. Like you knew something fishy was up, but I just didn't know it was going to turn into that either. So there's a few little fun moments in this. I did feel like the ending was a bit lackluster. I thought that, what is the main store clerk's name? The owner?
Jack.
Jack. I thought he was a little pervy in this episode. He's bobbing for apples and a bitch's tits. Did anybody else pick up on that?
Of course.
I was like,
I mean, he reached into her shirt. How do you miss that?
And I mean, like, this episode has a lot going on. Like, there's magic, there's exorcism, there's dead people. I feel like American Horror Story, the first season, Murder House, I kind of feel like it ripped off this episode. You know, like, I don't know if there was, like, ideas before this. Well, I mean, I know there was the movie Midnight Hour, which kind of has a similar premise of where the dead can rise for one night on All Hallows Night. I don't know how long that has been, like, an actual idea, or do you guys know, like, when that idea originated?
I mean, we're probably talking long before any of us were born. I mean, Day of the Dead. I mean, in Mexico, they've been celebrating the Day of the Dead for hundreds of years.
So they believe that. So I actually don't know. Like, Day of the Dead, like, it feels like a festival, but I never, like, actually, like, dived into, like, what it meant. I probably sound really ignorant, but you know what I mean? Like, I just thought it was like a festival celebrating the dead. I didn't realize that it had anything to do with the dead coming alive for one night on Halloween.
See, that's the thing, is that there's different lores that kind of intertwine with each other. You are correct. The Day of the Dead is a day of celebrating those that we've lost. Right. But it also, but then through fiction, you know, television, movies, things like that, it's kind of become almost like an All Hallows Eve, where, you know, the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead are the thinnest, and they can actually, like, the dead can visit the living on this one particular day, blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, the lore is kind of hazy, but they do kind of intertwine with each other, even though they don't really have anything to do with each other, Halloween and the Day of the Dead. By having the stories retold generation after generation, they obviously get tweaked, things get changed, things get misspoken, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I think that's why a lot of, I hate to use the term, but a lot of white people think Day of the Dead is like Mexican Halloween. Yeah, technically it's not, but there are similarities. So
overall, I thought the episode, it started out strong, didn't finish as strong for me, but there was definitely some fun to be had. Those are my general thoughts, if I didn't give too much away.
No, not at all. No. Oh, yeah, don't worry about spoilers here. I mean, we're talking about a 30-something-year-old series. I'm okay with spoilers. Mike, come on in here, buddy. Tell me some of your general thoughts on Helloween.
Yeah, my initial thought was kind of similar to Lacy's. You have the original shopkeeper return, and I know he made an appearance early on, but that made more sense because it was kind of like setting up the series and giving it the background of like the shop and all that. The way they kind of set up a showdown with him and Jack, Uncle Lewis and Jack, it's like, man, they must have not thought the show was going to last very long, because that's the type of showdown that you would think there's like this huge buildup for, maybe even like multi-episode way to end the series. And then it happens on the 5th episode of it. And because I watched the show so long ago, I don't even recall if he ever shows back up in the series ever again. Like, I just can't remember. But the other thing is, at the beginning of the episode, I thought the curse item was going to be that crystal ball because it looks like that's kind of like what unleashes his spirit. So I was like, oh, okay, they're gonna have to use that to like get the spirit of Uncle Lewis back in, I guess, because it seemed like that's what unleashed him. And that's the other thing, like, wow, they didn't have to do very much to unlock the power of it. Like, I think it was like one line of dialogue. One of the idiots that didn't follow the keep out sign, they go up and messing with the power to scare everyone, and then he literally says like, I don't even remember the exact line, but something, people of the spirit world, if you hear me. And that's all it took. And so yeah, I thought that was going to be the cursed antique, but it turns out no, it's actually the official antique of the episode is the amulet of Zohar, which it gets used. I also agree that like the beginning of the episode, it does really set up like a Halloween aesthetic, but I feel as the episode goes on, the fact that it's on Halloween becomes less important. Like it's more kind of like window dressing. Like, yes, it takes place on it, but after we kind of get into what's going on, it's really inconsequential that it's on Halloween. So that was a little disappointing. I was hoping it would be more of a Halloween theme throughout, but yeah, a little person from hell in there,
a little demon.
Yeah, a little demon. Yeah, there's a lot of like magic and sorcery used in this episode that I did not know Jack was a student of going into this episode. And Uncle Lewis has some straight up power too, even though he's kind of, I guess, temporarily out of hell, because the way he's able to fool everybody into his master plan, I'm like, wow, you really have lots of evil like ability just getting unlocked from hell, I guess. But it's a fun episode overall. I still enjoyed it for the most part, and we'll get into like more of the details afterwards. But yeah, I'd still say solid ep.
For me, this was kind of an odd episode. Like, first of all, we're having a party on Halloween at Curious Goods. Now, Lacy kind of alluded to this earlier. Why on God's green earth, on Halloween night, a night when literally the dead can take form and join the living and actually interact with us, why would you pick that night to have a party in a store filled with cursed objects? Like, I'm sorry. Like, instantly, as soon as I saw the party happening, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm thinking Jack had no idea. Like, I'm thinking that this was all Mickey and Ryan's doing. They're the young, irresponsible ones. But nope. Jack is right there at the center of the goddamn party, reading tarot cards and doing magic tricks. And it's like, really, Jack?
Bobbing for booby apples.
Oh, he's living it up.
Yes,
he was
bobbing for boobies.
He's he's probably asking them to introduce them to some of their friends, like.
And then they don't even block off the vault. They literally put up a rope and a sign that says "Keep out. This means you." Really, you have a vault filled with dozens of cursed objects, and you put up a sign to get people to stay out, and you thought that was going to work at a party with alcohol and young people.
The equivalent of like a wet paint sign.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they could have blocked off that entire room completely, just fucking locked it, put furniture up, just whatever they could do to just keep people from going there. Nope. In in Ryan's infinite wisdom, he puts up a fucking sign. So, like, instantly, within 5 minutes, I'm already mad at this episode. I'm already mad at the choices that they're making. I'm already mad at Mickey and Ryan and their constant teenage bickering, but that's obviously series long, at least until Ryan leaves mercifully later in the series. We'll get to that in a couple of years. And then, like Mike says, we lose the Halloween aesthetic. It's like, what is the point of all of this other than the fact that it's Halloween, other than the fact that the veil between the living and the dead are the thinnest on Halloween night? like, why couldn't the cursed object have been a mask? Like, wouldn't that fucking make sense for a Halloween episode? A cursed costume, a cursed mask? How about cursed makeup? I think, well, we've kind of sort of already did that, and we're probably going to do it again later on in the series. But again, there are so many more things that make sense. Like, why waste the return of Uncle Lewis on this particular episode? Like, you know, considering the introduction that we get to Uncle Lewis in the very first episode, knowing everything that he did, the pact that he made with the devil, the fact that he tried to break that pact, all of that information, and he's back in episode 5. It just doesn't make it. It's like Mike said, it seems like they didn't have any faith in this series. They didn't think it was going to go 3 seasons, because this definitely felt like an episode that should have been held for later. You know, either Uncle Lewis or Uncle Lewis and the devil himself. Could you imagine? They both come back to try to take over Curious Goods again. I mean, there's so many great ideas for what they could have done, and this one just, I don't know, it felt like it was lacking to me. Also, 5 episodes into the series, and this is the first time we do not get any backstory on the cursed item. We have no idea what the amulet of Zohar is. We don't get any backstory. We don't get any. Yeah, we get some very cryptic translations about its abilities, what it can do. But even then, we don't really get a straight explanation. And then on top of the fact that, you know, Uncle Lewis, of course, doesn't get to finish his ritual. So we don't even get to see the amulet in action. So literally, this is the first episode where the cursed object itself doesn't do anything, doesn't kill anybody, you know, doesn't hurt anybody, and we don't get a backstory to it. So I hopefully this is not going to become the norm for the series, because I like the backstory. I want to know about these cursed objects. And the amulet of Zohar, no fucking idea. You know, is it the medallion? Is it the chain? Like, I mean, we get nothing on this thing, and that's a little disappointing for me. I will say that the episode does get better once Uncle Lewis does show up, and once the idiot cousins do exactly what he wants to do. And I mean, did anybody have even the slightest doubt of what was going to happen? I mean, maybe Lacy, because she didn't see the very first episode. So Lacy, just like the cousins, Lacy doesn't know how much of a piece of shit Uncle Lewis actually is. He's basically a scumbag. And Mickey and Ryan never met him in life. They don't know Uncle Lewis. So when they see Uncle Lewis and they see this feeble old man make the plea that he makes in this episode, yes, of course, the wishy-washy little, you know, cousins who, you know, have a heart of, you know, a quote-unquote heart of gold are going to try to help this guy. And what's hysterical is at one point in the episode, Mickey says, "Why does this always happen when Jack isn't around?" The simple answer is because you're idiots, because you both are fucking stupid and did exactly what a spirit wanted you to do, whereas Jack would have instantly known that Lewis was up to something wrong. By the way, more plot holes. Did Mickey and Ryan actually believe that an old lady's body was in that room, not rotting all those, well, maybe not years, but at least months? Like, literally, they don't even question that there is a dead woman on this bed and she's not rotting and doesn't smell like death. Like, these two, I'm sorry, Mickey and Ryan are fucking children. They have the mentality of children, and it's starting to wear thin on me. It really is. Like, goddamn, I hope that these two grow up at some point. Overall, a decent episode. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorites, because it's absolutely not. I feel like this is a missed opportunity. A Halloween episode on a series like this should have been way more over the top, had, you know, way more stakes involved. Just, I mean, we don't even find out what Lewis would have done had he come back to life. Like, you know, he doesn't talk about his plan. So there, like, again, there's just no real stakes involved. It's like, oh, okay, so this guy's going to come back and what, take over his store? Like, again, we get no actual plan. And obviously, if you've watched the series, you know Uncle Lewis isn't going to be successful. That's a given. If he had been successful, what would we have expected? And we don't get any of that. So this is a very ambiguous episode. A lot of plot holes, a lot of missing information, a lot of withheld information. Just a very, very odd episode. But then at the same time, I'm sitting here talking about the cousins being so stupid, and Jack got himself in a situation, about halfway through the episode as well, which we'll kind of talk about here in a little bit. Maybe not as stupid as the cousins, but still pretty bad. Like, it doesn't make any sense that Jack would follow this little girl. It makes sense in the sense that Jack has a heart and wants to help a potentially lost child, but after a while, it's like Jack should have been smart enough to know what was going on. And even he wasn't. So that's what I mean. Like, there's inconsistent intelligence levels on this series. One episode, Jack will be a genius. Another episode, maybe not so much. And then the cousins are always idiots. So, what are you going to do with that? So let's talk about what we didn't like about the episode. Lacy, why don't you come on in here and tell me, like, what could have been better, or what did you flat out hate about the episode?
Oh my God, so I liked the episode, but as Mike mentioned earlier, the crystal ball would have been such a layup, such a cool object to utilize, see faces come in, or the ghosts come out of the crystal ball. But instead, all we get is this fucking amulet that looks like a sugar cookie turned into a rock. It looks like the cheapest fucking amulet I've ever seen. Is it from the Stone Age of the gingerbread house? I don't know. It was that bad. It looked like you could just break it in half easily. So no, I thought that the cursed object was the most lackluster part of this. I also thought it was weird that, Jack is obviously now a sorcerer and an exorcist all at the same time. It's fun, but you have to obviously suspend disbelief for the show, just period in general. But for him to be tricked by a little girl, he knows, as they're walking, he goes, I think we better head back. He knows something's up, but yet he keeps going. I get he doesn't want to abandon the little girl, but he knew. And then all of a sudden she turns into the little person, the little devil. And and all she does is put him behind a cage. All right,
a cage in the middle of an alley, by the way.
Right.
This doesn't make sense.
And she was I thought you'd be smarter than to have a trick pulled on you. Well, yeah, he should have been.
Yeah.
For all of his intelligence and being able to, why couldn't he exercise her right there? You know what I mean? And I just thought I thought it was hilarious that the uncle chose this little person to be his accomplice. Out of all of the things in the netherworld down below, that is what he chose to help him fulfill whatever it was he needed to get done in this episode.
The only thing I could figure is maybe that was the only demon willing to help him. Because ultimately, you're going against Satan if you're going to help Uncle Lewis in this plan. So, I don't know. That's a thought.
But yeah, I just thought it was, and I didn't like how they dropped off the Helloween. I wish they would have focused. And the episode is called Helloween.
Yep.
Really go for it.
I thought it would have been cool if the party happened throughout the entire episode. Do the entire episode in the shop while the party's going on. Make it so that the guests don't know that something nefarious is happening. But, Jack, Mickey, and Ryan are running around trying to thwart whatever is about to happen while other people are still partying in the house. It just would have kept the aesthetic up a little bit longer. Because Mike has a valid point. By halfway through the episode, it doesn't even matter what the date is. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, and I thought that we were going to get more of the friends that went down into the basement. But
Larry.
Yeah, we don't, nothing, he's the one who arose Uncle Lewis, but yet no repercussions for that whatsoever.
Yeah, Larry and Howard don't get anything happening to them, which doesn't fit the normal horror aesthetic. Obviously, usually the person who's the catalyst is going to get some damage, but nope. Larry started this shit, and he gets to walk out the front door scot-free. Go figure.
He gets to have a Halloween hangover.
Exactly.
It would have been cool if like we had gone to the morgue and it would have been his body laying there.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome, actually. I like it.
Right?
I like it. Mike, before we get into the walkthrough, why don't you come on in here and tell me something that you loved about the episode? What did you love, if anything?
For the most part, I like the opening because obviously by the title of the episode, like before I even started watching it, I was like pretty interested and curious, like, oh, we're gonna get like a full-on Halloween episode here. So like the opening with the party, everyone kind of in costumes, and let's see how this is going to relate. Like, is the cursed item going to be some type of like at least indirect like holiday themed thing? But that fizzles. But I could say for the first 5 minutes I was like pretty impressed, like, okay, good, that's what we're getting. What I do, okay, so even though I kind of was like befuddled by it early because it's so early in the series, I do kind of like that we get the showdown, or I guess conceptually I like the idea of Jack and the uncle, like, having the showdown, because you figure at some point it's gonna happen. The problem is it's kind of weak. Like by the end of this episode, it's almost like, oh, we just got to end it, so the sunlight is just going to send it back to hell. I'm like, okay. I like the crystal ball idea of like conjuring the spirit, and I was hoping that like that would get used more, but I guess not. And I like how it's just kind of like sitting out on a table too. Like they get up there.
It's just out.
It's not locked away or guarded or anything. It's just like right here for anyone to like interact with if they make it through the door. That's odd, but
yeah, it's kind of weird. That was something else that I was going to question. Like, why? It seemed like the vault itself was locked. Like nobody could actually get into the vault. But then they still had some minor cursed objects outside of the vault. It's like, do you have to be a certain level of evil to get locked into the vault? I didn't understand why that crystal ball was out.
Hey, and what was up with the? It was like a half-face mask. Was it supposed to be like a leprechaun guy with like the huge chin and ears at like the chin level? It was someone talking to Jack like near the beginning of the episode.
Oh yeah, the guy with the ears on his chin. I didn't get that costume either.
I was trying to like make sense of like what is that supposed to be. All I could think of was like a leprechaun, but I'm not 100% certain like what that was supposed to be. It was just weird as hell when I was like looking.
All right, folks, let's go ahead and get into our little bit of a walkthrough. This should be fairly quick since the party takes up the good chunk of the first act. So our episode opens. It's Halloween night, and what do you do on Halloween at Curious Goods in a store filled with cursed objects? You throw a party, of course. The episode opens up with Mickey having misgivings about the party. Ryan thinks that it's a good idea, good for business. He talks about how Uncle Lewis had a bad reputation in the community. Not necessarily that people outside of the store knew that he was in league with Satan, but obviously it's a creepy store, and if bad luck falls upon people who buy objects there, then obviously the reputation of the store is going to go bad. So like I said, Ryan thinks it's a pretty good idea to let people know that, according to him, 2 upstanding citizens are now at the helm of Curious Goods. Mickey is still worried, especially with the nonsense going on in the vault, but Ryan assures her, don't worry, I put up a sign on the vault. Yes, as we mentioned earlier, in Ryan's infinite wisdom, he puts up a rope and a paper sign saying keep out of the vault, which, my God, even in 1987, I mean, Jesus, you had to be smarter than that. Come on. So anyway, Mickey's dressed as a witch. Ryan is dressed as a medieval poet with some kind of weird mask on the back of his head. And Jack is Merlin. And Jack is delighting the crowd with, sleight of hand magic, tarot cards readings, things like that. Unsurprisingly, a couple of Ryan's friends, Larry and Howard specifically. Larry we met during a very early scene in the episode where there was a practical joke, a Halloween practical joke, where Larry pretended to be a dead body on the ground and then kind of popped up and scared Mickey. Just your basic childish Halloween pranks, nothing too special there. Anyway, Larry and Howard, they go ahead and go past the sign. One of them even says, I think it's Larry, says, this sign isn't for us. It's for the jerks upstairs. Mm-hmm. You were just one of those jerks 5 seconds ago upstairs, so I don't know what the hell he's thinking about, but there you go. They don't get into the vault specifically, but what they do is they turn off the electricity in the store in Curious Goods. They find the breaker switch downstairs. They cut the electricity, but then when they go to turn it back on, they end up blowing a fuse. So now there's no power in the building. And just when this happens, we see a crystal ball start to glow in the corner of the room. It starts to have like a blue glow. Larry and Howard both notice that. By the way, folks, Larry and Howard are the names of 2 of the 3 Stooges. That literally just dawned on me now. That's 2 of the 3 Stooges. So go figure. Like I said, the ball starts to glow. Larry sees the crystal ball and starts to play around, basically starts calling out to the spirits. Well, obviously, if you're in Curious Goods and there's a glowing crystal ball and you ask for spirits to make themselves known, it's pretty much going to happen at Curious Goods. And that's pretty much what happens. Basically, the crystal ball turns from blue to green, and then smoke starts coming out of the crystal ball, which instantly freaks out Larry and Howard. They run upstairs. They go by Ryan as they go up the stairs. Ryan gets mad at them, admonishes them, and sends them back upstairs. But Ryan goes to make sure that they didn't mess with anything, and while he's down there, he sees that the crystal ball is still glowing and still emitting smoke. And it's even giving like some faint howling sounds too, like moans in the background, stuff like that. So after Ryan sees this, he immediately goes to get Jack, and, Jack asks him, was somebody playing down there? Ryan admits that, yeah, somebody was down there. Suddenly, a wind picks up in the shop, and the shop is closed, by the way. They're having a party, but the shop is closed to the public. A wind starts picking up. It starts scaring the party goers. Then we start seeing cracks appear in the wall, and a chunk of the ceiling actually falls down to the level where the party is. And at that point, Jack ends the festivities and basically says, all right, that's it. Everybody out. Everybody get out of here. At this point, Jack tells Ryan to draw a pentacle around a desk in this room. For those who don't know, a pentacle is basically a pentagram with a circle around it. So it's a symbol that's used in rituals, demonic rituals, things like that. Jack admonishes Ryan and Mickey again about, talking about how Halloween isn't a game. It's the one night of the year when spirits can roam the earth freely. Yet Jack is the dumbass who went ahead with this party. I mean, he obviously had to agree with it. He was flirting with half the women there. So, but somehow he's admonishing Mickey and Ryan. So go figure. Basically, Jack does a weird incantation where they think that a spirit is loose in the house, that when those guys spoke to it, that it may have released a spirit in the store. Jack does some sort of incantation. It comes to a crescendo, and then everything goes silent, and they assume, okay, we're good. Everything's taken care of. Jack is obviously drained physically, so he sits down. Mickey and Ryan offer to get him a drink of punch upstairs. By the way, did you guys notice that there was a fucking punch bowl right there next to Jack's desk? Mm-hmm. They literally went upstairs, got 2 glasses of punch, came back down the stairs. There's a punch bowl right there. Dumbasses. I love those kind of mistakes. They're silly continuity errors. But yeah, there it is. All right. While Mickey and Ryan go upstairs to get Jack some punch, Jack hears a little girl crying right outside the door of the store. He walks out the door, and there's a little girl crying at like a park bench outside. He asks the girl, what's wrong? Why are you crying? She says that she lost her mother trick-or-treating and that she can't, figure out where she is. He asks her, well, where do you live? And she points down the road a little bit, saying, oh, I just live right down there. So Jack, of course, being the good-hearted guy that he is, takes the little girl's hand and starts to walk her towards, the direction that she was pointing to. Unfortunately, Jack realizes that they're walking in circles after a while. And right there at that point, I'm out. I'm like gone. But no, Jack, somehow the little girl again pulls at his heartstrings, convinces him that they're almost there and, that literally they're right around the corner. So Jack again helps her out. The little girl points in an alley and says, "Oh, I live right down there." Jack turns the corner to go into the alley. When he realizes that it's an alley, he instantly turns around, but then two cage doors fall down, one in front of him and one behind him. Obviously, this demon's pretty powerful because she created a prison cell out of this alley. So now Jack is trapped, and after the doors fall down, then the little girl, there's like a puff of smoke, and now suddenly she's a little person. She is now Greta, and she'll be known as Greta for the rest of the episode. As soon as the little girl turns into Greta and laughs at Jack, Jack instantly just says, "Lewis." He knows instantly that he's been had, and he knows that Uncle Lewis is behind it. I don't know why he knows that it's Lewis right away. I don't know if Maybe that might answer why Lewis is with Greta. Maybe they have a history together because, I don't know, Jack instantly knew that it was Lewis. So, I don't know. I'm speculating, obviously. I'm trying to connect dots that weren't meant to be connected. So, there you go. Mickey and Ryan end up coming back downstairs with the drinks to find that Jack is gone. Smoke starts to billow up from the basement, accompanied by a heavy breathing sound effect. You can hear some heavy breathing. Suddenly, as the smoke rises up the stairs to the main part of Curious Goods, we see a single hand reach out from the smoke, a human hand. And then suddenly the hand kind of materializes and becomes the spirit of Uncle Lewis. And this is where we see Uncle Lewis for the first time. Now, like I said, Mickey and Ryan have never technically met Uncle Lewis. Uncle Lewis died before the events of the first episode of this series. So they don't know who he is. He then looks at them and says, "What, you don't even have a hello for your Uncle Lewis?" And that's when they start to realize, "Oh, right, I remember seeing pictures. Yeah, that is Uncle Lewis, blah, blah, blah." Of course, anybody who knows anything about spirits is yelling at Mickey and Ryan right now, going, "Don't be so fucking stupid." Even if it is Uncle Lewis, which it likely isn't, but even if it is, why would you trust this spirit? It doesn't make any fucking sense. So Mickey confirms to Ryan that, yeah, that is Uncle Lewis. I remember seeing pictures. And Mickey and Ryan look nervous. Uncle Lewis promises them that, I'm not here to hurt you. In fact, I can't even touch you. I'm a ghost. I literally can't interact with you. And they ask Uncle Lewis, well, why are you here? Lewis says that he's returned to Earth to undo the curse. He explains, curses aren't forever. They only feel like forever. He also tells him about his final secret sin. And what does he reveal? Basically, he waves his hand and a secret passage appears behind a bookcase in Curious Goods. Apparently a passage that neither Jack, Mickey, or Ryan ever knew about. They walk through the passage, and at the end of the passage is this beautifully decorated, ornate bedroom. Looks like something out of the 20s or the 30s that somebody like a rich person from New York would have. Just decorated very nicely, but very obviously, old-timey, a lot of antiques and whatnot. And lying on the bed is a goddamn woman. Uncle Lewis claims that the woman lying in the bed is his wife, Grace. Now, Lewis believes that he is responsible for Grace's death to the point where he even says, "I murdered my wife." But he goes on to explain, "I didn't directly kill her. I think she died because of my greed and my deal with the devil." So he's still being kind of cryptic, not giving us a real explanation.
Yeah, at this point, I am kind of like wondering, so she was just preserved here in this secret room, dead this whole time.
Exactly.
They don't seem very skeptical of his explanation.
Yep. It's like you literally are seeing a human body on a bed in a room that no one knew about, and you don't think that body is going to start rotting, start smelling. Now, obviously, Uncle Lewis is taking advantage of Mickey and Ryan's stupidity, or, well, maybe ignorance is the better word. But, man, it just seems like if you know anything at all about the paranormal, you know to never, ever trust a spirit like that. Because even if they look like your uncle, it may not be. You know, it could be fucking Satan himself just looking like your uncle. So for fuck's sake, never trust a spirit ever.
And even if it is their uncle, it's like, you mean the guy who made a deal with the devil and then tried to double cross the devil?
Yeah, he definitely comes off as trustworthy. Absolutely. All right, so at this point, Lewis says that Grace's soul was taken to hell because of him and his pact with the devil, that when she died, her soul was taken to hell, and that he potentially may be able to help her, and that he needs something out of the vault. And what does he need out of the vault? We've already talked about it. It is the Amulet of Zohar, which, like I said, we get no backstory on, no idea, who's owned it in the past, what they did with it, if it ever sold, just, nothing. After Uncle Lewis gives this explanation that using this amulet, he'll be able to transfer his wife's soul from hell to a more appropriate afterlife, obviously Mickey and Ryan, both being the softies that they are, they agree to help. They literally walk right to the vault, grab the amulet. I don't remember Uncle Lewis giving them any kind of description. I mean, I would imagine there's more than one amulet in that vault. But again, suspension of disbelief. So whatever. Ryan believes that Jack would help Uncle Lewis if he was here. I should say that in their credit, they didn't just jump to help Uncle Lewis. They actually did have like a sidebar where they kind of spoke to each other and said, well, what should we do? Well, what do you think Jack would do? And that's when Ryan says, I think Jack would probably help him. So that's what happens. Like I said, I know me
bracelets made that say, what would Jack do?
Oh, God. And even then, they get it wrong half the time anyway, so who cares? The moral of the story is Jack should never leave Curious Goods. Just never, ever leave Mickey and Ryan in charge, because, yeah, you're going to come back to a shit show. Now, obviously, with Mickey and Ryan only having been there a little over a month, and I say this because this is episode 5. I'm not sure if the timeline is one episode per week in real, in the world of Friday the 13th. They could have been here a month, anywhere up to a year, maybe. Maybe Curious Goods doesn't have nearly as many adventures as we think they do, and they've already been here 6 months or whatever. The point is, they've been indoctrinated into what they need, to know about the cursed objects, the people that have used them, and goddamn, they're still so fucking stupid. Anyway, they do end up grabbing the amulet from the vault. They give it to Lewis. As soon as they hand it to Uncle Lewis, there's a flash of light, and suddenly Lewis is corporeal. He's actually flesh and blood right there. He's no longer a spirit. As soon as that happens, he instantly laughs at his cousin, at his niece and nephew, starts laughing at them, ends up locking them in a room and telling them, well, sorry, I needed to do this, blah, blah, blah. He tells Greta to go out to the garage to get the car ready. They end up stealing Jack's Mercedes. We're not 100% sure what the plan is, but obviously at this point we know that Uncle Lewis is trying to transfer his soul into another body. And there's a throwaway line in the show that says the body could not have met a violent death. In other words, he needs the body of someone who died peacefully. Now, when I think of that, all I think about is old people. Like, how many people die in their sleep? Old people, senior citizens. They're the only people that die in their sleep. So you're literally going to transfer your body to another old person? Like, seems silly.
Maybe there's a loophole if he transfers his spirit to a good guy doll.
Hey, I'd rather watch that story, that's for sure. Okay, anyway. While the cousins are trapped in this room that Uncle Lewis locked them in, this is where they start talking about why does this always happen to us when Jack isn't around. And yeah, like I said, it's because Jack would never be so stupid as to trust Lewis. But again, we give the cousins a little bit of leeway. At this point, we find out that Lewis has to complete this procedure before sunrise. Before the sun rises on November 1st, he needs to complete this, or else he's sent back to the underworld, of course. And then he has to wait another whole year to try to get this plan into effect. At this point in the episode, there's 3 hours and 41 minutes left until sunrise. So obviously, Greta and Uncle Lewis are, kind of pressed for time. So Mickey and Ryan realize that they can escape the room through the fireplace by banging out the back wall, which leads to the front of the store. They go ahead and escape into the main part of the store. Once they get in there, Mickey starts looking at the ledgers, trying to find something about the Amulet of Zohar. She doesn't find anything in the sales register. Usually what we would see is the sales register with the name of the person who bought it and where they live and stuff like that. What she does find, though, is a book written in Old English that vaguely explains what's happening. Unfortunately, Mickey's such a dumbass that she can't read Old English, so she's literally there trying to interpret what it says. What I don't understand is, why didn't she just fucking read it out loud? It's Old English. It's not like there's words in there that you wouldn't recognize. It's just that it's a different kind of speech pattern. All you had to do was read it out loud, and maybe Ryan could have deciphered what the text meant. But nope. She sits there, reads it herself, says at least twice, I don't really understand what this is saying. But then finally, she gets some information. She vaguely finds out that Uncle Lewis is trying to transfer his body into another body, one that died a peaceful death, not a violent one. So the smartest move they make this whole episode, they decide to go check out some mortuaries, because obviously that's where anybody who freshly died would either be at a mortuary or at a morgue in a hospital, and a morgue at a hospital is going to be well guarded. You're not going to be able to just walk into the morgue at a hospital, but at a private mortuary, more likely you could break in and maybe grab a body. So back out on the street, where Jack is trapped. Jack is still trapped in his little cage. We got a couple of drunken frat boys in Halloween costumes who decide to fuck with Jack. They actually get out of their truck. They see that Jack is trapped in this little makeshift cell, not even questioning who the fuck built a prison cell in the middle of an alley, but whatever. They're drunk, so I guess I'll allow it. They start fucking with Jack. They start talking shit to him. Well, Jack starts fucking right back. Jack starts talking smack to them, telling them how, oh, you're making fun of me for not being able to get out of here, but I bet you can't get in here. I mean, you guys look like, what, weak peasants. I think that was his exact words. Something like, you guys look like weak peasants that couldn't get in here if you wanted to. Of course, that pisses off the drunkards. They end up grabbing a chain out of the truck that they're driving, wrapping it around, some of the bars of the cell door, and then they connect it to the truck. They try to pull at it to separate some of the bars. Eventually, they're able to separate a couple of the bars enough that Jack is able to slip out. As soon as Jack slips out, one of the drunk guys, the one who's not driving the truck, starts talking shit to Jack about, all right, buddy, so, what are we going to do now? And Jack just literally throws a handful of flash powder at the guy and completely disappears. And he's now gone into the night. At this point, Lewis and Greta have arrived at the Abraham Stark mortuary. This is, of course, the closest mortuary to Curious Goods, so lucky for Mickey and Ryan that they guessed correctly. At one point, Greta asks a weird question. She asks Uncle Lewis, would you rather come back as a man or a woman? And Uncle Lewis's response to this is, I just want to be alive. Nothing else matters. My friends, I think it does matter. Could you imagine living your entire life as a man and then suddenly just being like, fuck it, I'll come back as a woman? That's got to feel so weird the first time you get fucked as a woman after living your whole life as a man. And vice versa. If you live your whole life as a woman being penetrated by men and suddenly you're the penetrator, that's got to be really fucking weird. Go ahead.
I think the question's more revealing for Greta, that she would come back as a man or at least a tall person.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I'm sure Greta probably doesn't care about male or female. As long as they're at least 5'10", I'm happy. But of course, we end up getting the explanation later in the episode that Greta is an actual demon. Greta is not a spirit or a specter. She's a legit demon from hell. You know, whether she decided to help Uncle Lewis voluntarily or if Uncle Lewis maybe had something on her and forced her to help him, we don't know. Again, more information that's kind of kept out of the episode. So once inside the Abraham Stark mortuary, Lewis can only find bloody corpses, which means that they all died violently, and he needs a body that died peacefully, not one that died violently. So they end up starting to leave the mortuary in hopes of going to the next one. But literally as they leave, a hearse drives up, and as the hearse drives up, we see Greta and Lewis start to take the body out of the back of the truck. The driver of the hearse gets out of the car, and I guess he's expecting to see the regular mortician, because he starts explaining, hey, this guy died at the hospital in his sleep. And then as soon as he finishes that line, he realizes that it's not the normal mortician, and literally starts to kind of get argumentative. Uncle Lewis picks up a big fucking crate and just smashes it on the guy's head, knocking him out. Uncle Lewis is a lot stronger than he lets on. There's got to be some demonic strength there or something. I don't know. They end up taking the body. By the way, did you guys notice how young this body looked? This guy looked like he couldn't have been older than 40, but he died in his sleep. Uh-huh. Okay. Anyway, Mickey and Ryan arrive at the mortuary. They see Jack's Mercedes parked outside, so they know they have the right mortuary. Ryan picks the lock, and he makes a joke about how Jack makes it look easy, whereas, you know, it took him like a solid minute to get this lock open. They sneak in. Their working hypothesis is that if they take the amulet away from Lewis, he'll go back to being a ghost. Because if you remember, as soon as they handed the amulet to Uncle Lewis is when he became corporeal and, you know, a physical manifestation instead of just a ghost. So, you know, it's not the worst theory ever. I don't know how much water it actually holds, but, you know, not the worst theory. At one point, this is the weirdest distraction I've ever seen in my life. At one point, Mickey walks into the room where they're doing the ritual. They've got the body there. They've got the pentacle drawn on the ground, candles lit all over the place. The whole room is lit up with candles. She walks in and goes, "Oh, excuse me, I didn't know anybody was in here," closes the door and walks right back out. At this point, Lewis doesn't want to stop the ritual, obviously, because they're running out of time before sunrise. So he sends Greta to go after Mickey. After Greta goes after Mickey, Ryan, who was hiding behind a door, then runs into the room where Uncle Lewis is doing the ritual. Now, this is where we see Uncle Lewis actually has some badass powers, because he literally throws Mickey across the fucking room. One of the better throwing someone across a room scenes I've actually ever seen. It actually looked halfway decent and painful. What was that, Mike?
No, I was just laughing at her getting tossed across the room.
Oh, fucking funny as hell. So, after Mickey's been knocked out, and this is another thing that pisses me off. Greta, our demon midget, basically suddenly has the ability to control people. Like, she literally walks right up to Mickey, waves her hands, and suddenly Mickey is in a trance. She's like, you know, under her control. And then Greta, literally using demonic magic, lifts her off the ground. So her body is literally floating off the ground, almost like it's on a gurney, like it's flat, but obviously there's nothing under her. And I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck did you go through all the trouble of pretending to be a little girl to trick Jack when you could have just fucking done this? Like, literally, it seems like this would have taken less trouble. Now, obviously, Jack being older, wiser, maybe he's too strong-minded to be able to do this. Maybe Greta could only do this to the weak-minded, because she ends up doing it to Ryan as well. With Ryan, she just controls him. She doesn't do the whole floating body thing. What she ends up doing with both of them is putting them in plain wood coffins and then starting up a cremation machine, the cremation oven. And she puts both of the coffins that have Mickey and Ryan in to the conveyor belt that leads into it. She starts the apparatus up and then leaves. Like any good villain, why would you want to wait and make sure that they die? No, start the machine up and then walk out. It's like a fucking James Bond villain.
The confidence of villains never ceases to amaze.
Exactly. Jack arrives back at Curious Goods. He finds a note that Mickey had left for him, letting them know that Uncle Lewis has the amulet of Zohar and that they're going to mortuaries to stop him from, doing what he's planning on doing. Jack rushes over to the one mortuary, again, Abraham Stark mortuary, sees his car parked in the driveway, so he knows he has the right place. And as soon as he gets there, he walks into the cremation room, sees these two coffins on the conveyor belt, and they're shaking. They're literally like shaking back and forth like there's something alive inside. So he goes over, he takes the one that's closest to the fire, takes it off the conveyor belt, opens it, and it's Mickey. Mickey is in there, but Mickey's still under a trance. She's still under the control of Greta. So Jack and I don't care. This was a guilty pleasure. Jack ended up slapping Mickey a couple of times across the face, which I wanted to be Jack so badly in that moment, just so I can smack her once too. But anyway, he smacks her a couple of times. She gets out of the trance. Jack then goes to deal with Uncle Lewis. Jack tells Mickey and Ryan to deal with Greta. What the fuck they're going to do? Greta literally just owned them a couple of minutes ago. I don't know what they're going to do, but Jack ends up going to where Uncle Lewis is still performing the ritual. He's still speaking the incantation. They have a little bit of a back and forth, good versus evil, all this crap. And then Jack starts reciting his own words. I'm assuming he's reading out of a Bible. So it's almost like he's reading the rites of exorcism. And at the exact same time, Uncle Lewis is reading his incantation. So it actually gets a little convoluted because we got two guys yelling incantations at the same time, hoping that one overpowers the other. At this point, Greta catches up with Mickey and Ryan, and she actually starts fucking with them. Like she's fully confident that she can take them out. So she starts kind of messing with them. At one point, she picks up a wooden chair and throws it at them. They duck out of the way, but the chair ends up hitting a power panel. Keep that in the back of your head. That's important for the end of the episode. The chair hit and smashed a power panel. Now,
yeah, and she chucked that chair clear across the damn room. Like,
yeah. Oh, hey, little demon got some strength. I'll give her that. And
didn't she like airplane spin it too first? Like before she let it go? She
kind of did that wrestling airplane spin move for like a couple of two full spins and then threw it. And which explains, I guess, why the chair went across the fucking room. But whatever.
Venom, I gotta ask you. Did you like this Greta better than the other Greta movie?
I think you know the answer to that already.
Well,
deep cuts there for the long-time listeners. Deep cuts. So anyway, after Greta throws the chair hits the power panel, smashes the power panel. The chair itself smashes into a bunch of pieces as well. And then in one of the stupidest television deaths I've ever seen, Greta goes to chase Mickey and Ryan, ends up tripping on a water bottle. I'm not fucking exaggerating, folks. She trips on a water bottle and impales herself on a broken piece of the chair. And literally, and apparently, you can kill demons by impaling them, because we see the piece of wood go directly into her chest, right into her heart, where her heart would be. Now, obviously, Greta's a demon. Does she have a heart? I don't know. But we see she gets impaled. She lets out, a growl or two, and then literally, poof, just disappears into a puff of smoke. Like, not even a very satisfying death. Just poof, gone. And now Mickey and Ryan join Jack back at the mortuary where Uncle Lewis is still doing the procedure. Finally, Uncle Lewis finishes his incantation. He finishes his incantation, and he's basically like, oh, cool, I'm done. But then nothing happens. Like, nothing changes. His spirit doesn't get sucked into the body. He's wondering what the hell happened. And then that's when Jack says, oh, you didn't finish the words before sunrise. And Uncle Lewis is like, what are you talking about? There's still 2 minutes before sunrise. And that's when Jack is like, nope, the power got cut out. Do you remember the chair that Greta threw and hit that power panel? It cut the power in the morgue. But because Uncle Lewis didn't have any lights on, all he had was candles, he didn't notice that the power was cut. So literally the clock stopped 2 minutes before sunrise. And then Jack, to prove that the sun has already came up, opens up the blinds, and in what we've seen in a million vampire movies, as soon as the sun hits Uncle Lewis's spirit, he disappears into nothing. My question here, though, is that the amulet disappeared as well, and that bothers me. Why would the amulet also disappear? You would think that his body would disappear and the amulet would just fall to the ground. But no, the amulet disappears with Uncle Lewis. So another first for the series. They don't get the cursed object back. It seems like they took a lot of chances, did a lot of different things that maybe they weren't planning on doing. And I do have a story behind that when we get to the end here. This episode is so disjointed, and it seems to break a lot of the rules of Friday the 13th. So, all right. So at this point, Uncle Lewis has been dispatched. Jack makes a stupid comment about his brother being able to make an exit. Now, like I said, usually at this point, this is where we would see the cousins or, one of the cousins putting the cursed object back in the vault. But like I said, because it disappears with Uncle Lewis, hopefully that means the amulet is gone and they don't have to deal with it again. Because if we see this amulet make a return, I'm going to be pissed off. The episode ends off with, again, one of their stupid little jokes. Oh, actually, no, the episode doesn't end off with a joke. This one actually ends off with something kind of a little somber. Basically, they start asking about Grace. Mickey and Ryan ask Jack about Grace because obviously, since they never met Uncle Lewis, they never met his wife either. And Jack starts talking about Grace very lovingly, and we see this look in his eyes where he's almost lost in his words. And then when he turns around, he realizes that Mickey and Ryan are both staring at him, smiling. So it's very obvious that this guy had feelings for Grace while she was married to his brother. Basically, Mickey and Ryan ask him, how well did you know her? And Jack's exact response is, better than I ought to, but not as dearly as I had wished. So, I don't know. Does that mean he got to second base with her or something? I don't know. Yeah, you interpret that as you will. But it's very obvious that Jack had feelings. Maybe. Maybe they made it to third base. Woo.
Maybe he bobbed for her boobies.
Yeah, you never know. he went bobbing for boobies. Exactly. So
I love how every episode usually ends with like the three of them joking and have a good old time about how they almost just got killed trying to like save a cursed item.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
It's funny too, because then Mickey makes a comment about after Jack finishes talking about Grace, she makes a comment about, oh, I wish somebody would talk about me like that someday. And it's like, you're still engaged to Lloyd, are you not? Like, we haven't heard an official breakup yet between her and Lloyd. I think we all assume that they broke up because of the events of the first episode, the way that she left it. But if they don't tell me specifically that they broke up, I don't know that they broke up, and I'm not going to make assumptions. I don't assume anything. So there you go, folks. And then the episode ends with the only titular line that we will get in this entire series. This episode does it actually does a few things that aren't done in other episodes, but the two big ones that I wanted to point out, one we've already talked about, is the fact that this is a Halloween episode, and this is the only Halloween episode in the series. For whatever it's worth, the makers decided to not make another Halloween episode, despite them doing 3 full seasons. Now, Is it because they weren't happy with this episode? They weren't happy with how it came out? I don't know. I did some research. I tried to find some information as to why they never did another Halloween episode, but they didn't. So I guess the only kind of justification I could think of is when you run a store filled with cursed objects, every day is Halloween. So there you go. That's about the only justification I can come up with. The other thing that this episode does, it never does at any other point in the series, is the titular line. The last line of this series, of this episode, is Jack looking at Mickey and Ryan, and he basically says, "Ha, you think Halloween was bad? In 2 weeks, it's Friday the 13th. And then he kind of looks into the camera and gives like a sly grin. Maybe he doesn't look directly into the camera, but he looks towards the camera's direction and gives a sly grin after saying, it's going to be Friday the 13th. So there you go. The only titular line. That is the only time in this series that the date Friday the 13th is ever mentioned. So
that's crazy.
There you go. Yeah, big time.
So in the next episode, it was going to be Friday the 13th.
Well, technically it would be 2 episodes from now, assuming they did an episode every week. If this is the Halloween episode, and then he said, Fridays in 2 weeks. So I'll have to look, because I did buy the DVD box set for the first season. So I'll look ahead and see what the next episode looks like, or the next 2 episodes. You never know. Maybe there is a Friday the 13th episode in there. There were a couple of stories that I found out in my research for this episode that I wanted to kind of convey to you guys. And they are both bad luck stories. Yes, we've heard about cursed horror sets. Just this weekend, literally as we record this, the new Russell Crowe movie, The Exorcism, is opening in theaters, which, again, talks about a cursed movie set. And there were 2 major stories here with this one. The 2 stories are, the first one has to do with the director of the episode, and that's Timothy Bond. Timothy Bond shared a strange story about how he got the job to direct this episode. And this is once again, from director Timothy Bond. Basically, the interviewer asks him about directing the Halloween episode of Friday the 13th. And he didn't remember at first. So he starts out the answer with, "Did I do that one? What was it about again? Oh, yeah, okay, I remember that now. The reason I don't remember much about that episode was that I wasn't supposed to direct that one. They got a guy, I don't remember his name. He'd done some great horror movies in the past. He'd even done some stuff for Hammer Films. I was quite in awe of this guy when he came in. I was editing The Poison Pen, an episode that we've already reviewed. While he was shooting this episode, I met him. He seemed like a nice guy. I had heard gossip from the set that he was very fast. All the directors were basically panicking because he was going to finish his episode long before any of the other directors finished their episodes. To the point where he was saying, oh shit, he's faster than we are. He's making his episodes in mere days, and it's taking us over a week. So I wanted to go watch him work, see how he does it. But before I had the chance to do that, I heard a rumor that they couldn't cut the footage. As it turns out, the reason that this director was finishing all his stuff early is because he was never taking reshoots. In other words, he was shooting everything once. Literally every single scene, he would shoot it once and then move on to the next one, which anybody who knows anything about Hollywood knows you rarely get anything done on the first take. That's a rarity. And in music, even less so. In music, you're playing the same song in a studio for like a month at a time. You get so fucking sick of it, but it's what has to be done. So anyway, as it turns out, this guy wasn't covering his shots. He did it all in one shot, and then he would go home at the end of the day saying he was tired. The next thing I know, John Anderson, producer of the series, comes into the editing room and asks what I'm doing after lunch. I said, yeah, I'm editing the rest of this episode. And he looks at me and says, no, you're not. Take this. And he hands me the script for the Halloween episode and basically says, you've got 1 hour to familiarize yourself with this script. Go do it. So he ends up assigning someone else to edit the Poison Pen episode, and he tasks Timothy Bond with directing the rest of this episode. Now, He goes on to say that the cutting room was right across the street from the studio, and I remember looking out the window and this limo pulled up. John Anderson walked this director out, put him in the car, and the limo drove off. John told me later that they had gone to his hotel room and packed his bags for him and put them in the car, and then drove him straight to the airport. So whoever this director was had to have pissed off some major people, because they're escorting him out of the hotel and escorting him to the airport. So, like I said, I tried to find out who it is in my research, but I couldn't find it. Timothy continues, I walked onto the set after lunch and the whole crew was looking at me like, what are you doing here? Nobody knew that I was stepping in. I don't have much of a memory of the episode, and I guess he had done 2 days on the episode and I did 6. Eventually, I got to see the footage he shot and do some prep. I ended up having to reshoot all of his shots because, like I said, he did them in one shot and they weren't great. They weren't, good to work with. They couldn't be edited properly, things like that. So he ends his story with, when people ask me what my strangest story of directing is, I say, when I replaced a director at lunchtime. Literally, before lunch, he thought he was just going to be editing the rest of the day, and then after lunch, he gets a whole new assignment to direct an episode he knows nothing about. He literally read the script at lunch, and then after lunch goes to start to shoot. And like I said earlier, that might explain a lot of the inconsistencies with this episode. Like I said, not seeing the amulet get locked back in the vault, not getting an explanation of the amulet, not getting a backstory, previous owners. Like, this episode is so weird, and I think that's why, because Timothy, was tasked to do this at the last minute. So yeah, crazy. And then one other horror story that happened, and this one happened to the composer, Fred Molan. Now, composer Fred Molan's experience with Helloween traumatized him so badly, it changed his work process forever. The rest of this is going to be a quote from Fred Molan's. At that point in 1987, the Kurzweil, and for those who don't know, it might be Kurzweil, Kurzweil. It's basically like an organ. So anyway, at this point in 1977, the Kurzweil had an internal memory that was on chips, not on hard drives. It was literally digital computer chips. The deadlines were very tight. I generally had 4 days to write and record all the music for an episode. Then on the 5th day would be the mix down, when I would mix everything I had written the previous 4 days. It would be on, and then the episode would be on the air 2 days later. Literally, they were putting these episodes out, finishing them up less than 2 days before the day they had to air on television, which is fucking insane, especially in the 80s. Fred continues, it was stressful, but it was manageable. However, on the Helloween episode, I had written a really cool score, very music heavy. It was probably 38 minutes of score in a 45-minute episode, the most music I'd ever done for one episode. I did all my work on the Kurzweil, overdubbed, built the sounds, built the arrangements, all of it. I did it all by myself. I was probably on the 3rd day of the 5-day process, which included 12 hours a day of writing and recording all of this music. I hit the save button on the Kurzweil, and I heard this. To this day, I can still hear the sound, like a digital thunk. And instantly I said to myself, what the hell was that? I looked at the readout on the Kurzweil, and it said initializing version 7.0. What Fred didn't know is that when the Kurzweil, when this particular version of it filled, when its memory chips inside filled, it automatically reinitialized, which basically means it deletes everything. Literally, everything that was on those chips is completely deleted. No backup. Don't forget, this is 1987, so computer technology is still in its infancy. And basically, He tried to do everything to recover all of the music, but it was gone. Literally everything he had worked on for the last 3.5 days was gone. He literally says since it was on chips, there was no backup, no way to recover it. It was literally gone in a millisecond. I found out that as you get near the end of the information you put on those chips, it will automatically go back to 0, restart, and erase everything. I lost everything. I was literally sobbing in my chair. I had a day and a half left to do 5 days of work. I was 100% convinced I was about to be fired. I had to make a call to Ian Peterson, another one of the producers on the series, and tell him what happened. He said, "Oh no, can you write it again?" I told him I don't use sheet music. I don't write my music on paper. I write it in my head. I perform it on the organ, and it records it. It keeps it for me. So basically, he says, I remember the basic themes. Yes, I can try to write it again, but we literally mix in a day and a half, and I don't know if I have enough time. Ian then called Frank Mancuso, executive producer of the show. He's the big boy, trying to move the mix date back a day to give Fred more time to re-record all of this music. Frank denied the extension, basically saying, no, we're on a tight schedule. I can't give him another day. So what ended up happening was Fred Mullins stayed up for the next day and a half. The entire time that he had left to do it. He didn't sleep. He said he barely ate, basically just drank water, smoked cigarettes, drank coffee, and stayed awake for the entire day and a half. I think he said it was like 40 hours straight. He stayed awake for 40 hours straight, finished the music, turned it in, and then he slept for 2 days straight after that. So 2 major horror stories involved with the production of Helloween, and the fact that it's a Halloween episode makes it that much more fascinating for someone like me who is a fan of cursed set stories. So there you go, folks. A couple of the horror stories from this episode. Woo, fun times, huh?
That's crazy.
Oh man. Ooh, I talked too long. My throat hurts.
Always a good
But yeah,
time.
I mean, this episode, like I said, it has problems for me, but after you find out about the fact that the director got switched, 2 days into the production, 2 days into a 8-day production, it kind of makes sense. Like anything that the new director didn't understand in the original script, he probably made some changes to make it make more sense to him. But like I said, yeah, this episode is very disjointed, breaks a lot of the established rules of Friday the 13th and Curious Goods. But hopefully, let's hope this is just an outlier. Hopefully the next episode is back on track, because I like the formula. I do like the formula. I like learning about these cursed objects. I like knowing who owned it before, how they got caught, are they still alive, things like that. Yes, it gets formulaic, but that's the formula I like. And this one, like I said, they tried something new. Whether it was a success or not is really up to the opinions of the viewer. In my personal opinion, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. A Halloween episode that really didn't utilize the Halloween aesthetic. It didn't utilize the Halloween lore as much as it could have. So overall, a fun episode, just maybe not one of my favorites. How about you guys?
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was overall, like, it started out strong. It does make more sense when you find out that the director was changed, which I did not know. That's shitty, because I think this episode could have been great had it started, stayed where it had started. But yeah, overall, it was a fun, decent time. The curse object was lackluster. I thought it was hilarious that Uncle Louis just disappeared into the wall with the amulet. It was like the worst fact I think I've seen.
Too.
Right. But yeah, I thought it was fun.
Mike?
Yeah, it felt like by the time we had like the big showdown, the episode was running out of time. So like there's like, yeah, he just kind of dissolves from the sun. Like, what is he, a vampire or a demon? Like, I don't understand why the sun would matter that much. And even what's her name, the little person demon, like the way she goes out, she almost kind of inadvertently kills herself, I guess, by by tripping and getting stabbed. So that was interesting. So I think the first half of this episode was definitely stronger. It set up something decent that just kind of fizzled as it went. But, we're only on episode 5. It's hard to really give a ranking. I would say it's probably like a middle-of-the-road episode, though.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, for me personally, it might be a little bit towards the back end, but ultimately, we're only 5 episodes in, and it's not my least favorite episode. So, I mean, that's saying something. So, there you go. All right, folks, this is going to be your final 10-minute warning before the store is closed. Please bring your final purchases up to the front, and Mike will go ahead and ring you out. In the meantime, let's talk to our guest clerk for the episode and ask her, where else can people find you, Miss Lacy Lou?
The Cut to the Chase feed, where I have a bunch of shows. Skip to Lou, The Last 20, Slumber Party Massacre, which Slumber Party Massacre episode will be coming out soon. Bad Daddies, where we discuss and debate horror films with bad dads. That was a fun one. And Dan and I have been back on the train of doing some Alfred Hitchcock Presents commentaries, and those have been a lot of fun. So, and I'm back doing some Full Houses. If you like 90s nostalgia, definitely check those out. But yeah, and we're always just kind of recording when we find something interesting. Like, we don't really like to record on shit we hate for some reason. So, like, it just, like, I just don't have, like, the passion to do it, like, unless it's, like, so bad it's good. But, like, The Watchers was so bad, like, I never even want to talk about it again.
Right there with you. As far as for Mike and myself, obviously, the No More Room in Hell family, you can hear us every week on Fresh Cuts. You can hear us every 2 to 4 weeks on the main show, No More Room in Hell. You can also hear me on Creature Comforts, our latest episode on Creature Comforts. We take a look at the 1987 cockroach creature feature, The Nest. A first-time watch for me, a very interesting movie. I've never been the biggest fan of roach creature features because I just never thought that they were much of a compelling antagonist. But I got to say, The Nest does some things in the third act that kind of, makes it more than just cockroaches run amok. So I'll give it credit for that. But yeah, that's our latest episode. That is available as we speak. Check out that wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. It should be on YouTube as well under the No More Room in Hell podcast feed. So check that out. Mike, anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing yet. I mean, I got the project with Duncan coming up, but it's probably going to be a while because one, we don't have an actual date for it yet, so it's probably not even going to be released for like a while down the road. But other than that, yeah, the No More Room in Hell podcast feed on YouTube or Dark Discussions Network. Everything can be found. The latest episode of Fresh Cuts is Under Paris, where Derek from the main show was able to join us to talk about the movie. So, and then coming up, we're going to be doing Exuma, which hit Shudder. It's one that I wanted to see in theaters, but unfortunately it had like one of those super short one weekend theatrical releases here, so I wasn't able to get out to the theater, but luckily Shudder picked it up relatively quick. So that's what we're going to be talking about next.
Very cool. All right. So there's plenty to listen to from all three of us. So check out our other shows. And that is it for this episode of the Crystal Lake Gift Shop. And my friends, the store is now closed. Thank you all for visiting us. And we hope to see you sooner rather than later. Hopefully we don't have any more mishaps in the store that make us close down for a little bit. But other than that, thanks again for joining us. And why don't we say bye to the folks?
Thanks for the laughs.
See ya.